Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of our Thrive in China podcast. This is a rare edition because I actually have my guest here with me in the room. So for those of you that are listening on the podcast, Sissi is here with me, sharing screen time. So today, let's start off. I'd love to introduce you all to Sissi Zhao, who also lives in Luxembourg as well. Sissi, why don't you kick things off and maybe introduce a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how you ended up in Luxembourg.
Thank you, Tina. And hi, everyone. First time meeting you. I came to Luxembourg about 12 years ago. Originally, I'm from China, Chengdu. As those one who knows China, Chengdu is known as one of the most beautiful and most known for the spicy food.
Yes.
So
and the pandas.
And the pandas and the earthquake. So there are a lot of things that we know about Chengdu.
Yeah.
So I grew up there until 22 years old. So I went to university there as well. I studied law. And then it was always my ambition to study abroad. So I was choosing at the time between US and the UK. For some reason, I never liked the US, so I decided to go to the UK. To decide which city or which university to go, and I was told London is very expensive. So I ended up in Liverpool.
Of all places.
Of all places. And the first 3 months I was in Liverpool, I almost didn't understand anything with their strong accent. I almost thought for the last 10 years I didn't study English, I studied something else. They told me it was English. So, but after that, I think I spent a year and a half with Liverpool University. I studied international law there. That experience actually enabled me to understand English speaking with very strong accents, but from, let's say, other non-native countries. So it helps a lot. Then after that, I went to Erasmus University.
Where?
I was enrolled by Bologna.
Okay.
So I studied law and economics, but I never went to Bologna. I actually went to Hamburg. I went to Ghent in Belgium. I also went to Aix-en-Provence in France, and I graduated from Rotterdam, the headquarters. So that was the best 1.5 years of my life, I would say. I had lots of fun, and we had classmates from all over the world. We have also teachers that from all over the world. That was a very different experience than the Liverpool education. It was a lot more open and inviting, and then the culture was very mixed. Then after that, I actually worked very briefly for international bar associations, for the barristers in London. Then I also worked on the project for United Nations in Vienna for anti-money laundering in 2004.
Very interesting.
And then after that, that was 4 years after I spent my time in Europe, and I moved in, around 13 times in so many different countries. I was nostalgic. I wanted to go back to China. I wanted to start working there. So I went back to China, to Beijing. I worked for Sidney Austin, which is one of the biggest US law firm in China. And that's where I discovered my ability to do business development rather than desk work. And then I moved to Shanghai. I worked for Home Reports, social media. I worked also for private equity firm doing fundraising during 2008. So we traveled around. We raised capital for infrastructure projects in China, and that actually brought me to Luxembourg. Because in the fund industry, Luxembourg is country that you cannot escape. Then a lot of fund administration and structurings are going through here. This is where I made my connection, and then I met my current husband in 2008. And then 4 years after, I decided to move from Shanghai to Luxembourg, and I started my job with TMF, which is the biggest corporate service provider and fund provider in the world. Then I switched to Orangefield, which was the ING Trust. Then later merged with Vistra, which is also becoming one of the biggest corporate and accounting fund service provider until 2 years ago. Because I was in charge of the China outbound business there. And we did a lot of merger acquisition deals between 2015 and 2020 when COVID started. The whole landscape has changed. So M&A is becoming a lot more difficult. And then I believe that international expansion, organic growth is the future. And then the globalization has taken a different turn. And I think regionalization is more popular than the globalization. And therefore, I moved to my current company, GoGlobal, which is a HR providing solution providing company that we provide solutions for helping clients expand globally without us going through M&A. However, having said that, this solution can also be used in carve out. So we actually did 2 deals lately for Chinese companies and doing carve out deals with their counterparties in Europe, where we are inheriting the orphan employees in the countries where clients have no entities. So I have been to Europe and China. I lived in both sides. I worked both sides. I traveled around, and for the moment, I think as far as I'm aware of, that I'm staying in Luxembourg, this very small country, but I love it.
Yeah. So you're working for an HR company, sitting in Europe, and from our previous conversations, I know you've got a team of people that are working under you in China doing business and development and sales, because your interest is getting Chinese companies to somehow enter the European or the global markets, and you're helping them also hire people without actually establishing entities in Europe or the US or Canada or wherever else. So, remote working is a new it's a new thing since COVID. What has it been like for the last 2 years managing a team from Luxembourg that is based in China? Now, I say this because this is the dilemma. I mean, your business is the reverse of what most of my clients are doing, which makes it fascinating to have a different perspective. But ultimately, like my clients, they're sitting in Europe and they're building and managing a team
in China
and a structure in China. So I'm just curious, how are you managing this? I mean, we all have issues, but how is it going?
Well, for one thing, I can tell you, it is a challenge. It's not easy. Well, if you put
and what I love is that you're mainland Chinese saying this, managing the mainland Chinese team.
Because actually, my team, majority of them are seated in China, and I also have team members seated also in Europe as well. None of them is actually easy, and then this is actually our company is organized based on remote working structure at our clients as well. So I can see my struggle, and that actually applies to our clients as well. So there are a few challenges I'm facing. First of all, time difference. So I don't have the language issue here, like really, like
the cultural or language barriers don't exist, right?
Not between me and my team. However, of course, the cultural difference still exists between my team and the other parts of the organization, because we are an international company, so we have colleagues of more than 60 nationalities, and everybody's from different cultural backgrounds. How do you communicate and coordinate that? That is not only just to my team, but for me, the time difference is definitely a challenge where I'm 6 hours, because it's summertime, I'm 6 hours behind them. So in the wintertime, 7, meaning we have only 4 to 5 maximum effective working hours together. That also means my team have to work late, because if they want me to support them on certain things, they have to work in my working hours. And also our clients also have high expectations. They are very demanding. They are expecting response 24/7 availability from the service team. That's one thing. And second, I think remote working is hard psychologically than everybody's mind, myself included. We talked about this. How do you differentiate your working life as your private life? Because you stay at home. You open the door behind you, you have your private life. And then there's no working hour because nobody is checking, meaning you might not have time off for like a lunch break. You don't have actually physical colleagues that you can talk to, you can have a
brainstorm with. Exactly.
You don't have this physical
back and
connection.
forth discussion, right?
You don't have this small chit chat time because we go on Teams or Zoom, then it's only everything's scheduled against their time,
and the agenda is scheduled, and you have
and then on there you only talk about what is included in the agenda. You don't talk about your personal things, small chats, your holidays, your feelings, the weather today, your parents, your pets. You don't talk anything of those. So I think that is a bit anti the human nature. We are social animals, and that's remote working takes that away. So it is very important for us to find a way to rebuild that. For instance, we meet at least once a week.
I mean, it's funny that you say that because during COVID, one of the things that I observed between my clients based in the HQ and their team locally in China was this lack of just saying to the Chinese team, how are you? How are you? You're locked down in your house physically, mentally. How are you? But not only you, how's your family, your children, your parents, whomever else? There was this, I don't know if it was a maybe uncomfortable conversation to start. I don't know, but it was so much avoided that I do know that it was almost like they were treating the team in China as robots. You are robots, and this is your function, and this is what you have to do instead of as people. Right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think even for instance during those lockdown time, we did manage to send food box to colleagues locked at home. We do ask them, is there anything we need? However, I think it is also probably a very Chinese culture. They are less expressive of their feelings.
That's very true.
Especially on screen.
Sure.
But offline, probably they're a bit more open, but online, they probably doesn't feel comfortable to actually talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
So that's a very big difference between Chinese and the non-Chinese. For instance, we have the town hall, we call it GoBiz meeting every month, twice. In the morning is Asia Pacific, in the evening is Europe and America. I do see the reaction. We'll talk about the same thing, but the reaction is different. The afternoon session is a lot more interactions.
Dynamic.
Yes, and the people are a bit more expressive, the likings, the dislikings, raising questions, but in the morning,
more proactive as well.
Involvement a lot more. In the morning, it's whole Asia Pacific, not only just China. It's very quiet. It doesn't mean they're not listening, doesn't mean they don't agree, but they are more on the receiving end rather than considering themselves as part of that or
part of the team or contributing to the team.
It's more submissive in my opinion.
Right. So how does this relate then in your day-to-day job? I mean, what do you do to overcome this? Are you traveling to China? Do you have tips to get them out of their shell, or what are you doing to get over this hurdle?
To be honest, I don't think I have actually a one-fits-all solution for everyone. I'm still learning as well. But to answer your question, yes, I do travel to China once a quarter at least. I spend at least 1 month every travel there. So just spend time with them. To have the chit-chat talk we just talked about, to have dinner with them, and also to bring the team together, where then, even in China, my team are scattered through in different cities.
Right.
They don't meet. Even in the same city, they don't often meet. So I wanted to bring them together where we can talk about things that is not work related.
Right.
Then to build this bonding.
Right.
That's one thing. And then of course I have one-on-one meetings with them where then instead of expecting them come to me, talk about their issue, then I ask them.
Do you have an issue?
So I observed this. Is that a problem? What is that problem? So since it's one-on-one, they tend to be a bit more open, because if you put a group of them on teams together, then they look at each other, they do not open up. But even though there's one-on-one, sometimes they're still if you they're more defensive, as if depends on how you ask the question.
Sure.
If they feel genuinely you already met them so many times, you're kind of like a friend, not just colleague or boss, then
they'll open up more.
They trust you more, and they're not judged. But otherwise, especially for my new joiners, I feel that then they're more defensive. They think if you have a problem, that means you're implying they have a problem,
right?
And then that means they're making mistakes or something. So they become defensive.
They put a wall up.
Yeah, they try to justify.
Right.
They think it is their fault, which is not. So I think that is also a very big culture difference here as well. And of course we try.
So you know what I like about all of this? Sorry to interrupt you. What I love about all of this is that as a Westerner, these are exactly the things that I talk about as my challenges with my Chinese team. And I have to say, I've put a lot of the blame on the cultural differences or perhaps the language nuances. But you're talking with them in mainland China. Yes. I mean, you're talking to them in Putonghua, right? Yes. It's not like you're mixing up languages or anything like that. So I think it's a dilemma that everybody faces, you know, whether you are a foreign investor or whether you are a Chinese company, these are issues because of the world we're living in with remote working. Like you said, even a couple of staff living in the same city don't even meet with each other anymore. We're lacking this social connection. So it's also, I think, important as probably a takeaway for me as a team leader is figure out ways to bring people together outside of the work environment. I remember when I was living in Shanghai, about 8 or 9 of my team members in Shanghai started a badminton group. And they asked me, Christina, could we go on a Thursday? Could we have 1 extra hour for lunch because we booked the court and we're so many? Could we do 2 hours at lunch? We're going to go play badminton and have an internal competition. And I thought this was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And it just motivated them. It was something they looked forward to every week. It's something they talked about every week. It was like an internal rivalry between teams. And I thought it was wonderful. It was a wonderful dynamic that they instigated. And then it was a matter of me approving it, you know, saying, yeah, go ahead, but make sure the job gets done. It means you guys are going to stay an hour later, right? And we just have to make sure our work gets finished. And they were very receptive to that. And it's something I'm trying to instill still in the team is, okay, if we can't get sports groups together, can we get other communities together where go for a lunch? I'll pay for the lunch, but go for a lunch or do something dynamic.
Interesting you're saying that because internally we have the policy where every month employees entitled to such an amount where they can go to do their team building with teams that they have in the city. I even organized some poker game and mahjong game online before. You know, it's like for instance in the Friday afternoon where the workload is a little bit more relaxed. I think it's extremely important to build this team spirit.
Yes.
When you're working remotely, that also I observed that it also improved efficiency.
Yeah.
Because you need other team members to support your work, but if you don't know them, you only know them through the screen. Or it's just through Teams, it doesn't work. But once you met them once, talk to them, have dinner, or you know, some sort of personal connection, things are a lot more smooth. And I think that also it's not monetary. However, that is looking after the mental health. I myself also needs to.
We all do. We all do. So jumping off of a totally different topic. I always find it fascinating because I'm in the space of foreign investors going into China. And that's been my career for 20 years. Your career has been helping oversee Chinese investors coming abroad in the form of mergers, acquisitions, funding, and now in the space of HR, recruitment, and hiring people. Can you give a general idea to the audience? What is the trend at the moment post-COVID of Chinese companies coming abroad?
I think it seems, as I said earlier, the landscape has changed significantly. The turning point is not even 2020. I would say it's more 2021, where second year of COVID. So that means it's not a short-term thing anymore. And also the pipeline's been drawn to, as there's no pipeline involved any deals. And the world and China has been going different directions since those years. But then I think most Chinese companies are struggling to keep their heads above the water. So they are looking at new business sectors and expansions, not only in China, but also outside of China. So a lot of companies that used to be very self-sufficient just with the domestic market, they are looking at expansion overseas.
And do you see a difference in industry or sector, or are you in industry specific or sector specific at all?
We do look at industries and sectors. I think in the beginning it was a lot of e-commerce. As you can see, they are very well established now, like Shein, which is one of the biggest e-commerce. You have JD, you have Alibaba, all of that. And then now, I think this year, we see the renewable energy sector is booming. So you are looking at this EV, you're looking at those charging stations or anything relevant.
Right.
Yeah. And then, of course, during COVID, those years, you also have the pharma sectors. And especially very interesting for the pharma sector, that China is actually looking into anti-bribery in the pharmaceutical hospitalization sectors. So that also they are launching some procurement process where they're pushing the price down to the extreme where if you are included in the social security system, you make no money. So where do you make your profit? You have to look at, for instance, in Luxembourg, social security pays everything. Then the price is actually reasonable. Pharma company can actually make profit and the patients can enjoy those results. So that's also very interesting. And then obviously there's artificial intelligence. And I believe that is going to be even bigger than internet. And it's going to change completely our lifestyle. Maybe next time we will be on different platforms and
completely right. And are there areas in the world that the Chinese companies are focusing on? I mean, is it Europe? Is there a specific place in Europe, or is it the US, Australia? Where do you see that movement going as a first step?
A lot of them going to Southeast Asia first, especially for manufacturing companies. They're setting up factories there. As you know, this the supply chain plus. There's a struggle, there's political tension, and Apple is leaving China. They moved to India. They require their suppliers to follow them as well. So if you want to keep them as a client, you have to go to India as well. So manufacturing companies are going to Southeast Asia for sure, but then the purchasing power of Southeast Asia is not that high. Therefore, for high technology companies, they're looking for distribute their products. They are coming to Europe and North America. When I say North America, mostly actually US. So that is depends on the sector. And then we do see a little bit of Latin America, especially if we consider Mexico as Latin. A lot of car manufacturers are going to Mexico to set up their factories there. But they're mostly aiming at the North American
markets.
In Africa, I had quite some clients have investments there, but it's mostly natural resources. So Africa is not yet consumers market.
No,
it's not well enough. They don't really even set up factories there because of the ability of population and neither. But then even in Europe, it's divided. Depends on the need. If it's manufacturing, East Europe is picking up strongly because of the cost of labor. The labor cost is very good there. But then if you are looking at the clientele, if you want to be close to your clients, then definitely middle of Europe, like Germany, France, and then South Europe. That's where they're looking.
So one comment you made earlier was when we were talking about the remote working, was that the Chinese clients have very high expectations. I have to touch on this. They have very high expectations. They need service 24/7. Can you maybe I don't know if that's an advantage, disadvantage. I don't know if that's a challenge, not a challenge, but I would love to hear your comments on that in terms of, working with Chinese companies. What are their expectations? What are they expecting from foreign companies and foreign individuals?
I would say, maybe if I can, I want to broaden this topic even a bit more, especially if the audience are looking at going into China, so meaning maybe also consumers market, B2C. Then if you're looking at either B2B or B2C, they have high expectation. It's not that really their fault, but the market is so competitive, meaning every business to survive that market have to come up with new things, new products, new service,
Be
new
innovative.
ideas.
It's all about the innovation aspect, right?
Constantly.
Yeah.
Regularly, constantly. And also China is a market where social media is playing such an important role there. So no longer like the traditional marketing channel like here in Europe, but there are so many different ways. So it is very competitive, very innovative. It encourages or even pressure you into be flexible, innovative, and you always sleep with one eye open. And even for myself or my team, that we have no language issue, we have no cultural difference. We actually compete there with international companies.
Yeah.
We compete with domestic companies. You have to, as a service or product provider, you have to find what's your advantage. You have to know the market. What are your competitors doing on the market? And how do you differentiate yourself?
So this, sorry to interrupt, but this comes to a very interesting point for me, differentiating yourself. My history, thinking about China, is that it's a cheap country, right? Everything is cheap. And it's not. Things have gone up.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about Chinese customers and their expectations and how you differentiate themselves, is price the bigger thing that they look at? So if a client of yours is looking at you and comparing yourself, is price a mixture of everything, or does it outweigh more than the other added value aspects you're bringing
in? Unfortunately, we can't generalize because of the diversity and because of the clients have at different life cycle and their experience. We have clients where they value service quality more than pricing. As far as, okay, the pricing is reasonable, not like you're going to rob them. We have clients who do not look at quality of service at all. They
only look at price.
They actually said in the open, we only look at price, for instance, and even there's no, because with their brand, they know that they can afford it. So I think it is very important for us to operate in that country to know what are the elements your client is looking at or looking for. And if you are actually...
But that's hard, because then it's a case-by-case basis.
It is case-by-case basis, but then we could do the other way around, meaning what's your advantage, you have, what's your differentiator. Then from that angle, you identify your clientele. You can't expect to have all.
Sure.
No way.
Absolutely. So I think that's an amazing point to touch on all, because I think a lot of people make the assumption that they go to China and they're going to get a piece. I think they think about the piece of the pie as being all of China. But I don't think that's a reasonable thought to have, right? So you're right. You got a niche. You have to niche and really have kind of like a client avatar, right?
Yes.
And analyze what are the characteristics you're looking for. So when you are analyzing a client, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for actually, because what we offer is a correct price for good quality. So now normally actually I do not take any RFP looking at low price. For those, I'd rather let go because I know I will not win it. And then I emphasize more actually clients already have some experience dealing with our product, had bad experience. So bad taste in their mouth, then they know what they're looking for. Normally, I do not look at the top tier client because where then they are very demanding. They know associate your brand with
kind
their
of bit
name.
snobbish.
Even people working there, they're probably not, but then their internal policy would make them. Yeah, it's like a
little peacock.
Where the next thing you should be thankful that they give you business, you should give them for free. And I'm not offering anything for free because free service is not appreciated by anyone.
No, absolutely.
So I'm also not looking for extremely small startups neither, because that could be risky. So it's more like in the middle range.
Okay.
And then there's a lot actually in the middle range. So that means you can still find a lot of clients.
But it looks also like you're niching into certain industries, certain sectors as well, based on the trends that are appearing, right?
We have very open mind. So we're not gonna say no to any business. However, when we have limited time, energy, and effort, where we have to focus, especially when you're talking in China as the market, the market is so massive and so diversified. You can't target China as a market. You have to see the segmentation of you have to check what's the persona of your client.
Right. So leading off from, there's so much to talk about, but I got to cut it off somewhere.
Right.
So leading off from that, I want to talk a little bit about the foreign investors that are coming in. So for those of you that aren't aware, I also offer similar services as Sissi does in China. We offer the employer of record service based out of our Shanghai office. And the reason why Sissi is sitting here, even though she is a slight competitor, is the fact that I can't do everything. An employer of record is not my bread and butter business. And how we collaborate together is actually when foreign investors say, Christina, I actually need to hire somebody in Chengdu or in Chongqing or in Beijing. I don't have a branch office or entity there, so I can't pay the local social insurances in those cities there, which means that I collaborate with Sissi to be able to offer that solution for my clients that are coming in. And I just wanted to get your opinion, because I think this is what is a little bit of a dilemma for a lot of foreign investors. And I'd be curious to know also about Chinese companies. China's enormous, right? So my company policy is, also because I just want to simplify my life, is we've headquartered ourselves in Shanghai. I don't really have any intention to expand into other cities. I want to kind of centralize the administration work and the team there. Also to develop a bonding aspect with the team, but also just really honestly to simplify my life. So, and however, I'm not like everybody else. There are companies that are coming out to China where they say, yeah, we're going to start off in Shanghai, build a team there, and eventually we will need a branch in Shenzhen, we will need a branch in Wuhan, we will need a branch in wherever it might be. And the fact that the government has come out now and said, you know, if you want to hire somebody who's based in Wuhan and that person wants to have social insurance and housing fund, you can only get it in that local place. Otherwise, they just have to be prepared to pay for the Shanghai rates. I find it is limiting to companies to expand within China, right? And I feel like in every other aspect, they are opening up their doors. You know, when I think about from a tax perspective, which is my core area, having the e-fapiaos now, I mean, it is going to, it's wonderful, right? It is wonderful. But then there's this step backwards in terms of the social insurance and housing fund that I don't understand. And I don't know if you have an opinion on this, but I mean, whatever you can share from your perspective on that, being also mainland Chinese, right? If you would move back to China now, this would impact you as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think then we're touching a relatively sensitive topic here. It's the political governance structure in China.
We are, yeah.
So we have the central government. Then you also have the regional, let's say, municipality or provincial government. They are the one responsible for their social security spendings, earnings, their financial revenue. So obviously there's certain competition among those municipalities or provincials, even those industrial parks. They come up with different policies as far as it's within certain framework. They could be very creative. So my take on that is that if this person works there, then that means they have to be taking care of this person's going to hospital, pension, and housing, and extra in the future. Then of course everybody should be mine because I am responsible for that. I would not like to see this one goes to Shanghai. So I think that is somehow being localized as they are looking at their own balance sheet as well.
Yeah, but it's the reverse impact for the companies that are trying to stimulate the economy and hire people, and everybody's on a budget. Well, I'm not now going to set up a branch office in Wuhan, rent an office space, set up the branch, do all the administration
for
work.
one person.
For one person.
That's where we come to play, where then we can ease all of this.
And do you think this is a trend that will stay?
Well, this actually circles back of what I said earlier. I believe globalization, at least, is being put on the pause. Regionalization. If you look, Europe is regionalizing everything. That Asia is probably some countries are regionalizing certain things. So it's no longer last 10 years, we enjoy this beautiful globalization, everything's becoming so easy, everybody's collaborating. Well, unfortunately, in my opinion, I think it's not the case anymore. This is exactly in a smaller scale echoing that trend.
Right. It's a pity though, right?
Oh,
and
no,
it's definitely an
absolutely.
obstacle, but I think as any obstacle in China, just keep in mind, at least that's been my philosophy, there's always a solution.
Yes.
It's actually
they're crazy.
It's actually a matter of educating yourself, building up a knowledge level, and knowing how you can get around these obstacles, right? So that's what I also love about GoGlobal, is that they have made the investment to expand within China to be able to cater to that service. Whereby if you've got one staff member, I don't know, in Nanjing, one staff member in Chengdu, one staff member in Yunnan, in Kunming, and one staff member, I don't know where else, you can do that with a provider without having to set up an entity, without having to set up multiple entities in each of those cities. It's a huge advantage, for a lot of foreign investors that are coming in. And what I'm noticing now too is that even companies, and that's what brings me maybe to Chinese companies. So whether you have a Chinese company registered in China, owned by mainland Chinese, owned by a foreign investor, we've also seen now dilemmas where these companies are, let's say, headquartered in Beijing, or not even headquartered, have an office in Beijing, but they want to hire somebody now in Guangzhou, and they don't know how to do it.
Absolutely. And also hiring in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, it's a lot more expensive.
Right.
I realized that because my team are mostly based in the first tier cities. I start to look at the second or third tier city where you pay 1/3 of the salary.
Right.
You get sometimes even better quality.
Right. So it's like this dilemma. We're instilling this trend of remote working. We're trying to save costs. We know people are cheaper in the tier 3, tier 4 cities, but we have our entity and our main team sitting in Beijing, let's say, and now we got to hire somebody in Kunming. How do we do it? Right. Everybody we're interviewing says we want Yunnan social or Kunming social insurance and housing fund rates, but we're Beijing based, right? And it's how to find that solution, that obstacle, to be able to actually hire somebody. Right?
Yeah, that's where actually why we see an opportunity there is to facilitate for our companies to help them. And of course, obviously, once you grow bigger, or if you decide to set up a back office somewhere, and then you have enough people, then you can help them to set up the company and doing accounting and tax returns in the city where they have, let's say, more than 5 people there, then it's worth it.
So there are a couple more things. We've got 10 more minutes to go. So just to close up today, I want to highlight successes, because I think people don't talk enough about their successes.
Yes.
So in your career, what have been your major learnings that have impacted you to be able to do what you're doing today, to be able to manage a remote team, to deal with Chinese customers from abroad, but on the other hand, deal with foreign investors going in? I mean, it's both sides. What are maybe the key traits that you have learned over time? And I love this because, again, I just want to emphasize Sissi is Chinese. So I'm actually really curious to know what they're going to be.
I think there are a few highlights of my past. The first thing I mentioned, Erasmus. That's a blessing. Definitely, that actually is the moment where I start to understand or to be connected on both sides, the Asia side, the Chinese side, and the European side. Well, we used to always say, that there's a culture difference. Sometimes it sounds cliche, but it is true. But we cannot just say it's culture difference. What does it mean exactly? So I think for foreign company doing business in China or Chinese company doing business overseas, this bridging, this communication, understand that difference. I'm not even saying that eliminate the difference. Understand the difference is so important. Accept that.
Have empathy as well,
and
right?
Well, let's say stop being snobby and do not consider yourself as the center of the universe.
Right.
There are some other cultures, opinions, structures, laws, systems that is different. So, and I also, that's one thing. And second, I found localization is extremely important. For instance, if I don't have my team in China, I don't think I could build the China business within GoGlobal like this. In 2 years' time, we basically, not only triple, I think times 5, times 6 the business size.
How many people do you have in China?
We have about 20 people in China.
Right.
Then
that was built over 2 years.
Yeah, that was built over 2 years. But also, you see, I mentioned I also have team here.
Yeah.
So if I only have team there, that doesn't work. I have to have team here. So then they can actually function as the bridge. That's also very important. And then the rest is, we have to be. Well, I think it's a good thing to deal with Chinese clients is you are challenged every day because they challenge you to come up with something creative, flexible. So that means I have to use my brain cell to the maximum to find a solution. And of course, it doesn't always work. But I do, at the end of the day, sometimes that find solution because client pressures me. And I want to give a tap on my shoulder saying, you are very good at this creativity. So I'm not an artist, but I think I am creative.
It's so funny that you say that, Sissi, because yesterday I did a masterclass series and I was talking about how to review and analyze your China business. And I said, one of the things that you sometimes have to realize is that you can't standardize things in China.
No.
You want to, so you can have a standard fee structure, but know that that is a flexible document that needs to be updated based on the people sitting in front of you, right?
Yeah, I think standardization is very important, especially if you're going to automation.
Right.
So we are very strong on the automation in the system. So that means my operational team will not allow me to mess with their structure to the extent. So that means I need to understand the operational structure to the so much detail where I know what I promised or changed that actually collapse the whole structure. But on the other hand, then it's my philosophy, and I don't know if it's a wise advice, so take it or leave it. When you deal with Chinese clients, do not take you have to bargain, but don't accept anything they say. So it is a game, it's a dance.
Yes.
You go one step forward, 2 steps back. So sometimes
I don't want to say it's a dance because a dance is normally very smooth and
it's
fluid.
romantic.
I think we got to say it's a game.
It's a ping pong game.
It's a ping pong game. And I think what I would like to believe, and I don't know if you have that, is we want to create a win-win situation for everybody, right?
I absolutely agree. It has to be sustainable. So there are cases we said no to our clients. We said, you know what? I don't think this is gonna work, so let's just leave it like that. And then after a while they come back. Yeah. Because they learned their lesson on the market. Oh, and of course sometimes they don't come back. That's life. But I don't believe that you have to bite your teeth and swallow this, because then you have a bad mouth in your the bad taste in your mouth. Then you are harming your team. They will not like these clients. They will not give them the service or quality that you wanted to or promised. Then it will be actually really a bad circle of action and reaction there. I do believe we have to be fair. Everybody have to gain something from that relationship.
Right. So to finish off, I finish off all these podcasts now with one question. And the question is, what is the one piece of advice you would give yourself back on the first day of your job? I mean, obviously at that point in time, you don't even know how your career is developing.
No.
But in relation to working, to a career related to China.
Are you saying something that I wish I'd done differently, or
Yeah.
something I thought,
So,
okay,
let me give you an example. The last interview I did, the gentleman said to me, don't be shy, right? Go out there, don't be shy. You cannot be shy if you want to do business in China. You have to be strong. You have to be not get intimidated. You have to go out there and introduce yourself to as many people as possible in order to build that network and build your business. So that's what he said.
I absolutely agree with that, but I'm not going to repeat that here and said it. So I think my keyword will be creative, have an open mind. Open mind doesn't mean you actually open mind to receive things, but you have an open mind to create things, create solutions, create service, and adjust yourself to the circumstances.
Love it. Yes. Be flexible.
I would prefer creative.
The key word of the day is creativity.
Absolutely.
Well, Sissi, I want to thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Tina.
I'm going to be providing Sissi's details in the show notes with her email address and the website of the company as well, so you can reach out to her at any point in time.
Oh, if I may, maybe there's one more thing. Doing business in China, you have to have a WeChat account.
Yes. Well, that's a mandatory.
Right.
And the newest news is actually, as foreign individuals, you can now attach your foreign bank account to the WeChat account. So when you go on business trips to China now, you are not stuck
with cash.
You can actually do it on WeChat. Alipay has been able to do this for quite some time, but not many people are aware of Alipay and don't actually set up Alipay accounts. But you can do it on WeChat because most people do have it anyway for communication purposes. I started doing the process, haven't finished it yet, because there's a lot of verification steps you have to do. But I also have the link to an article from Tencent giving the 3 steps to actually get that set up. So
yeah, I managed the last week to set up my Luxembourg bank account.
Amazing.
I think last 5 years I've been traveling to China. I didn't take any cash with me.
Yeah.
That is really such a blessing that you don't have to carry
cash. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's the beauty.
Well, Sissi, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tina.
Have a great day. And thank you for everybody who's been listening in. Take care and goodbye.